I've developed over the years that I've been through dozens of hardware launches, from marketing concept development all the way through starting production. So that's my role, is the technical program management side. The other main part of our group, besides the technical program management, is the operations side, operations VP. So that process of how do you get your supply chain, how do you select your manufacturing partners, how do you manage that process ongoing, is that kind of these two pieces go together to make a complete hardware product program.
Just to take from what Jake said, my background started off as WE as well, but then veered onto the dark side and became an operations management guy. So managing. That's the other dark side. That's really dark. So just managing the factors of the world. So typically I work with the team that Jake manages, and then going through all the phases of prototyping and then making it MVP and good enough for mass production before transferring to my team, where we'll work with the resourcing group, and then finding the right partners for you guys to be able to scale to the next level. So beyond from one to be able to make many millions. So went from EE and then went into operations management, and yeah. So what we realized is that a lot of startups, they kind of figure out what they want to make, but then they lack the management. So there's a gap from where the idea is created before they could actually make it productizing. So that's where we come into play, and the product group with different expertise in the different parts of the product the design process, be able to help you traverse that chasm, that help you guys go through.
Does that process has its name, and what is the name?
NPI?
NPI! It's in the famous word, NPI.
Yeah, NPI, new product introduction, is actually NPI. And what does that mean to you?
So I chose this panel about this topic because I love how big this whole idea of new product introduction is. And I think it's pretty funny when people bust out this term, because there's just so much involved. And I kind of, before I jump in too much, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts first. But I guess I generally hear it more from a marketing perspective, a little bit, that it's how to get into the market with a new product, and what is that process?
Yeah. Well, generally, that's kind of how I think of it. It starts usually when I get involved. Sometimes it is a marketing idea. It can be that early, or it's a marketing idea and some prototypes, or maybe it's some prototypes and a vague marketing idea. But the very important thing at the beginning of this process, as you get into it, is you have to define what your product is, and that gets into your product requirements. What market are you addressing? What is it intended to do in as concise a way as possible? And from there, we can then start to build the rest of the process to get you from that concept, that definition, to something that's actually coming out of the production line and selling out to customers. So.
Well, similar to what Jay said, once you have the definition, and then it has to be supported into what kind of, on my one side of the world, what kind of business case I get ready to make. Is it going to be a premium product, or is it going to be a low-cost product? Because then you would have to approach your whole supply chain and partnership very differently. Do you want to develop it from scratch? It's going to be a premium, high IP stuff, or it's going to be like more on the design side, but then you want to commoditize, everything else. Then it could be a joint development, or an ODM, or licensing, or even just changing packaging, as simple as that. So you really need to define what the product is first from a marketing standpoint, and then decide what kind of business I'm trying to run off of, what kind of selling price, your marketing, your market niche, because that will define all the supply chain, or whether you have the budget to support a certain type of supply chain to support that product.
So what would you suggest to those who are actually targeting to develop high-end product for high-end customers or markets?
I've seen it actually done in different ways. Some people go without ODM route, and they can still create a high-value item by maybe customizing certain parts where they have a lot of IP, and then making sure that allows them to create something that stands out in the crowd. But some people really believe in from the ground up. For example, your speaker, right? You know what? I'm gonna outdo Dolby's sound system, recreate the whole sound, and then from the internal to the external, do it from scratch. But that's a totally different journey you have to take, right? You're gonna hire a different team for that. So it really depends on what you're trying to define, and also you have to create a budget for that, right? You can imagine hiring all of those sound experts to create something that's totally unique and never been done before. It's going to cost totally different than something that's existing, but let's do a nicer, user experience that way, but not the technology side, right? Then you will resource accordingly, and then that cost differently.
I think it gets into definition when you say premium. That could mean, for some people, that means standard electronics with beautiful case around it, beautiful materials, or it might be performance oriented. It's got to have certain performance requirements, and that's about knowing the market you're going after. What is that market going to value? Will they, if you put a really expensive piece of electronics in there, will they appreciate that? Maybe not. That's what you're trying to do. And very often, if you pick the right things, you can give that premium feel and still keep it at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical perspective on all of this, is that it's all driven by the market, right? I mean, what any individual thinks about what premium is or what isn't premium doesn't matter, because one person is not going to make your company successful. Unless you're sending them to the moon, maybe, but that in all the successful startups that we've been closely working with, I'd say there's one really common thread is that they really focus on the marketing and they do it out of the box. Actually, this is a really good example. Is we made a glass water bottle with a silicone sleeve for a client, and she came to us and she wanted to make her initial value proposition was use something that's comfortable so that you reduce waste. So that was her marketing kind of brand. And then she started selling these, and she had one lady that bought like 40 different colors. And these were $40 bottles, which had never been done before. Previously the most expensive water bottle was like $20. This was 9 years ago. And so, wow, it was like $35. And she was like, wow, how is this person buying 40 of these? And that led to more research, and she realized that this was not a water bottle, this was a fashion accessory, right? And that's why she could have a fashion market, right? And so then she went totally that direction, and she, her website looked like, Glamour or, one of these fashion magazines, and so it was really the market drove all of that, and it made her product premium. Her product in itself, low cost, easy to make, nothing really that crazy, but the attention to detail on the packaging and the marketing drove everything. So, really focusing on that early on and knowing who's your market, what are they going to pay for, what problem is it solving, and do those numbers. I think that drives the finances. Finances drives your engineering budget. Engineering budget drives what you're able to accomplish.
It sounds like happy end, because most of the time startups realize late what was their market.
Well, I would say that's one of the things.
Just changing the website, right?
Yeah.
In this case, it was. That's lucky.
One of the things that I find sometimes is most difficult is when a company isn't clear about these things, or they want everything, and then they get into the project, and then you realize you have to change your plans because it's not working. It's not going to work. The costs are too high. You lose a lot of time and money that way if you're not very clear up front about what you're trying to do.
So what is your strategy for NPI?
Okay, so we're starting with that, but the first part of the strategy is defining requirements as clearly as possible, knowing your market, your marketing requirements, and build your product requirements to meet that market. Then you take that and fold that into engineering requirements. Often there is a trade-off. Once the engineers see what you want to build, they come back and say, or how much that's going to cost you, or whatever. But you have a negotiation. Then you have to decide. It makes you really come down to making your priorities I can't afford all 5 of these things at once, I gotta narrow it down to 2. You have to make those decisions as soon as you can before you get too deep into the project. So,
Same thing on my end, right?
Yeah.
You give me your engineering definition, and I start laughing at you too, because like,
Yeah.
I can't afford to build this because this doesn't exist, or it's too
Right.
expensive, and then like, these negotiations. So all the way from marketing requirement to engineering requirement to production
Yeah.
requirement, it has to be synced up and close loop feedback to the marketing person. Hey, it's going to be this finally, okay? Can you still sell it?
Right.
Right, and then you have to be in agreement because if not, I'm going to give you basically, not an Apple product. You sign it as an Apple
Right.
image, then they'll get the Discord.
Yeah,
Right.
that's correct. Yeah, I think that's true. The supply chain as you're designing, is very important. You could design in something beautiful and it's really not a tedium, as we say. You can't find it, or not can't find it at a reasonable price. So you've got to be checking with your manufacturing and your materials. Can I actually achieve it at a reasonable cost with what's out there in the world? Everybody wants to invent something beautiful. My rule of thumb is that in any new product, the truly new things that are in that product should be counted on less than one hand, right? Because it's going to take you too much. It's going to take you a lot of resources to develop something truly new. Focus on only the real key things. Everything else should be as standard as possible, so that you limit your risk and you limit your cost.
Yeah, I guess you avoid also to educate the customer too much.
That's correct.
No, but that's kind of circling back is to make sure that everything's in sync with all of that.
Yeah.
Is communication,
Yeah.
right? So the marketing communicates well with engineering, and the engineering communicates well with production, and it's fed back to the marketing so that when they get the product finally from wherever they're making it, oh my gosh, it's exactly what you want, and not wait, it's watered down. Well, because we couldn't do it, so so it's communication is key.
Okay, I have to ask you at this point something. So you say like marketing, engineering, production, back and forth, so those are actually terms, those are not people. How does communication meetings, they look like? How do you communicate between each other? Or is this some kind of forum, or like how these documents actually look like marketing documents? What is the most important thing in them? So how do you communicate all of this?
Generally, when I come in, get involved, the first thing is to make sure that you have some regular system of communicating. Usually that would be probably a weekly meeting of your development team, that you have an opportunity for all the major team members to talk to each other about the project. Not necessarily design things, it should be an hour-long meeting, maybe half hour to an hour, so that you're keeping together, synced up, who's doing what, when, and you're getting real communication. So that's first and foremost. And then establish one set of communication tools, whether that's Google Docs or whatever the tool of your choice. It almost doesn't matter as long as you pick one. And then you build a document repository. So when someone does a design, they know where they save it and where they're supposed to pull their information from. And it's not scattered over 3 different platforms and 12 different laptops.
Because you need accountability. You want to make sure there is a plan of attack, and then compare against that as the journey happens, that you're following a certain path or I'm deviating. But if you deviate, you know exactly what you do, right? And not, oh yeah, not sure, kind of, yeah. That would be very, very
Well, revision numbers are a classic
Right.
case, right? Even if you're writing a document, put a revision number and a date on it, and every time you edit it, update it. Because at some point you're going to have 12 different versions, and someone's going to pull the wrong one.
Here's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Where do you put your certification requirements?
For us, it depends on the customer.
Where does the customer put it? Where you guys?
In what respect? In the repository or physically?
I mean, like what kind of document? What is the name of the document?
That again also depends on the customer. It would typically come, for the most part, in the brief or the RFQ in our case.
And then how about you guys get me started? Where would you put that as you're thinking of things you need to keep track of?
Well, you're asking specifically certification requirements. So as I'm vetting factories, for example, as I'm speaking to vendors, I've got a master checklist of things that I need to see in order to qualify them Well, it's a vendor information. That's what I call around. I digitally
Yeah.
call around when I go to these trade shows. So
Those are
days
ordered file.
of handwritten notes on paper suck. So I do this, and then I snap photos, and then I take selfies with the guys I talk to. So kind of a process to try to keep all that info straight at the end of it. Then this is easy for me to go through. I can share this easily with my co-founder as well. It's not, ideally, all this should be probably digitized so that it can be database, but we're not that big of a small operation.
I'm glad you brought this up because I was totally leading you down the path. But
You say that now.
well, I have found it's amazingly, everybody has their own names, their own places to keep this information. There's not a really good way to share it. Little secret here, where we're going with Hardware Massive is a subscription model and trying to add more tools where that would make sense and give the tools that would really be worth paying for. And a big part of it is this organization of information. And having done this a lot now, we see pretty clear categories, product requirements document, right? This is very underutilized. It's a lot of the stuff you're talking about, and this is where you would put that. And that's easy to share with vendors, it's easy to share with partners, and then there's a marketing requirements document and pitch deck template and stuff like that. And I'm just really curious, what do you got? Is this valuable? If you could see okay, this is all the information I eventually need to have. And the most valuable thing I think is where the gaps are, right? That you see, hey, oh yeah, certification requirements. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for huge corporations. I started out my career in General Motors. Of course, all these companies have their own bespoke systems in-house to do all that. And you're talking about revision numbers, so any tiny change to revision to a drawing gets a revision number.
File convention.
Yeah, and I worked there during the days when we would still output huge blueprint drawings. These days, when as a startup, as an entrepreneur, I look at tools like Monday and Slack and Smartsheet, but none of them are ideally because they're generalized.
They're for bigger firms, right? They're for broader teams.
Yeah, they're for broader teams, and then because they're industry agnostic, the problem is that they don't necessarily cover some of the ways that we need to communicate or allow for the kind of data sharing that are optimized for the kind of stuff that we do. Even things like Adobe Creative Suites, you think that the Adobe Cloud would be optimized for creative data sharing, but it's ridiculously expensive for how little data they allow for you. And it's like a single an Illustrator file can be 300 megabytes. So it's like that adds up really quick.
So do you think it would be valuable?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, from specifically for hardware people, because you've got, for starters, you've got the engineering side, you've got the design side. You also have the marketing side. I mean, everyone's talking, and so there's a lot of stuff going on.
I think what you're getting at is more like a virtual DCC. Document control center. So if you run ISO, you need a DCC.
Yeah.
So more large companies will have to have DCC, right?
Definitely.
That's kind of what they're getting at, is that person that centralizes, archives, organizes, spots the gaps, goes to the people that need to fill those gaps, and you create those templates according to your business model. But ISO will also mandate certain things as well.
I'm a big believer that, especially for small companies, you need to scale your process to where you're at. I mean, if you try to put in place an ISO companies, right? You try to put in an IBM or Intel level of processes into a little startup. You're going to spend all your time doing paperwork and then you're kind of designing, and it doesn't gain you that
Go
much.
process crazy.
Right. You can't go process crazy. So when you're 3 people, one agreement on here's the Google Drive repository, we're going to throw everything there, that's fine. But as you get into 20 or 30 people and you're starting to get rid of manufacturing, you may want to actually license, an arena or some sort of doc control system, and then you have to build it and administer it, and there's a lot of steps in between. And yes, there's places, I think, for services to add some structure so that a startup can very cheaply add some structure without burdening themselves with a lot of maintenance.
Maybe like a package of
Yeah.
like, hey, collaborative tools for this, but in one package need to be tied together so that people can have that, like the Microsoft Office suite, like it's a Maker suite.
Yeah.
But one thing when you're doing your audits, you say it's not digitized right now, right? You'll regret later. I would do that right now.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing you've got to go on, and if it's not digital, you're going to have to migrate it at some point. If you want to build up your own database, all of that's you're going to have to.
Yeah.
You should be just doing your own basic Excel spreadsheet for your audit document at least.
Yeah, but that'll be after. Like this is good enough for me to get through because it ends up being only like a few dozen vendors that I'll end up seriously considering, and then a lot of those. I mean, it'll probably, without going into a lot of data management or spreadsheet comparisons or anything, probably 60% of these vendors will just be, wiped away, dismissed. Either they don't want to work with me, or I don't want to work with them, or just they're not responsive or just not capable or whatever. And then the ones that I'm left with, yes, then those are the ones that I'm actually going to catalog, keep safe.
In my experience, the more you use Google Sheet and Google Docs, more what's
It's also safe, right? At least it's not stored on one device. It's just
Risk
there.
management.
Yeah.
That's good, but it's very difficult when you start to grow the information, how to have an overlook of all these spreadsheets, documents, and
Yeah.
that's why nobody's there signing. Oh my
So,
God.
so here's the pain point, and then this is, I think, really what I see is that when you're getting into hardware startup world, you have no idea where to put all this stuff. Even if you have a great background, those systems are huge, and you're not going to recreate that. Right? You have to start something very small. So, I think it's basically comes down to about 7 or 8 documents, as well as some cookie cutter, NDA, NNN, some legal stuff. But it doesn't really need to be huge. But the advantage is that if you put the name of your company once, it's in all the documents now, right? If you put your phone number once, it's in all the documents. If you put your product, your certification requirements, it's in the 2 places where you need it, and then you can just go through that relatively short list compared to what you're trying to deal with, and you can see, okay, wow, here's some major gaps right out. I don't know, my DNS color or some of these things. But yeah, that would be basically it.
Yeah, I would like to ask next question. Because I think we're tapping into that. So, what are some of the most overlooked aspects of NPI by hardware startups?
Well, as I've mentioned already, I think the product requirements. A lot of times, it's a cocktail napkin, and then they start developing, and that will get you in trouble if you don't go back and do your marketing analysis, your product requirements, and then your engineering requirements. Those are key, really important ones right there. It seems obvious, but I'd say 90% don't do it thoroughly.
So how many RFQs you received
Yeah.
with incomplete documentation? Like 70%, 60%?
Given the size of the companies we work with, you'd be surprised how incomplete a lot of them are.
Exactly. And everyone has told me the same.
And even the bigger ones, every time they'll keep adding pages because they missed it from the first iteration. So 3 years down the line, it's grown because we've done lessons learned with them on site, and then say, okay, we'll add that to the next round, which is good. But you'd think they'd all have everything organized, but these, no, they don't.
And then the next thing that I get involved in a lot is creating a real project plan. Once you have those requirements, building out a schedule and a plan to get there. Very often it's the human nature to be very optimistic and underestimate how long things take. And I found that the more you break down to smaller pieces the work you have to do, suddenly you realize it's going to take longer than you think. So, oh yeah, we can do that in 6 weeks, no problem. And you say, well, now break that down for me into all the next task, and it turns out you've got 9 weeks of the work there. Wow, and so you've got to go through that exercise to build that plan, and then you have to monitor your plan every week, every month, because plans change, and you have to be willing, to assume they're going to change, and readjust your plans as you go, so that you're always aiming for realistic goals. Aggressive goals, but realistic goals.
Normally in average, which is the deviation. So for example, if you say, I don't know, 6 months and, I don't know, $100,000
Yeah.
at the beginning.
And it always goes up.
But it's like double or?
I think it depends if
It
you're talking
depends.
about
Yeah.
the mechanical side or the electronic side.
Oh,
The
the project.
mechanical side, you can get more accurate than you
Okay.
can the electronics, I would say.
And
That's
software-
where most of the money is, right?
Yeah,
You
and,
test
well, I
it.
tell the software,
Yeah.
software's
of course,
workhorse
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah, software can really blow up on
But the
you.
mechanical side is pretty.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, it's a defined cost that you say X number.
But your tooling
Exactly.
techniques.
Yeah.
So you know what it is.
It's
know,
more,
yeah.
more visual, no? It's easy to understand.
Yeah.
It's more.
Yeah.
And
I would
it's-
say the exception is when you get into feature creep.
Yeah.
And that's where you make a design, you make a plan, you do your tooling, and then some executive or something says, oh, no, that's not going to work. I need to change that. I want 3 LEDs, not 2.
Or marketing said this, or
Right.
had consumer feedback.
And now you have to basically redo tools, and that can get very expensive.
Yeah.
And during that process too, all the definition and planning, as a supply chain guy, I'm the last person to get the surprise package. Right? So I try not to get a surprise package. So I try to plug everybody way ahead of time, like let me in, so I can see and peer inside to see what's in store for me.
So are you saying?
That's a great insight. Communicate early with
The supply chain, that's,
Yeah.
that's the message.
Because sometimes you think in silos, you're like, I'm done. Hey Bob, help me. What is this?
Oh.
And then there's a lot of curveballs, right? But because in supply chain, everything can be solved. Give it enough time and money, right? So at least give me time, right? The earlier I am involved in it, the more I can give people say, hey, you want to achieve that, or you can achieve a similar thing in a different way at a different cost, right? So I can start putting my input in there early on, and hopefully scoop out the supply chain side of things, and not get this really nasty harm that, as she said, get the titanium stuff, right? That's not available. That we also.
How does that affect the budget?
Getting your earlier question a little bit, I think a perspective on this is really that, it's the unknowns that prevent your success, right? If you could look at a project and you knew everything about it immediately, right, your head would hurt, but you could have success, right? You would know the pricing, the customer, the development, everything like that. So it's all of the unknowns that really create the exciting challenge. And so, one, the more experience you have, the more experienced people you have looking at it, to identify those early will help tremendously. But the other side of that is every unknown, it shrinks your margin, right? It increases your timeline. You never run into an unknown that helps you for the most part, right? It always makes things harder. So the better you are, the better you're going to be able to guesstimate and figure those things out. But that's also just having that perspective that, coming to that mindset that, okay, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of things I don't know. Every one of those things is going to increase my costs, it's going to reduce the price I can sell it at, and it's going to increase my timeline. Build all of that in early so that when that does happen, you're ready. And I'd say the 2 things from our perspective are price margin. For that reason, your cost, from your initial estimate, your costs always go up from those unknowns. Your ability to, what you're able to sell it for almost always comes down because you do take into account distributor margins or what have you. And then the other one is DFM, which is closely related to product requirements, but more specifically to tolerance. Those more subtle things that are where people are not thinking about.
And I can segue that when you talk about unknowns. One of the things that's often overlooked is the importance of testing and validating your product early. So if you can do a design on paper that as an engineer, well, that's going to work. The design works, right? I built it on the bench. I built one that worked. Right? But when you start having to think about building many thousands, you have tolerances, you have variances in materials, you have the way things go together, and you've got to find out as early as you can how robust your product is to real world things. You know? So in a very, very early stage, you have your traditional processes, engineering validation, or design validation, to get that product into some sort of testing. You know, environmental testing, hot, cold, vibration, shock. Build statistically significant sample of them as early as you can, so that you find out, do I have a 1% or a 5% or a 10% rate of defects due to variations that I have to correct? The sooner you can learn that and get it adjusted, better. Because when you don't want to learn it, it's when you're in full production, you just ship 10,000 and 10% of them are failing in the customer's hands. Then you've got a disaster. So, yeah.
Also make sure you've got the budget for the development stage, because a lot of people
That's
think,
exactly
I'm
right.
going to make this much, it's going to cost me this, but then they forget about DVT, all the test products that they need that we're going to fail, they have to redo it.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to throw away,
Tens of thousands.
depending on your product, you're going to throw away dozens or hundreds of products.
Quick question. Because a lot of hardware development is hard, and all of this validation requires time and money. Are hardware investors, are they aware of that? Are they tuned into it? Because sometimes I worry that if you ask a certain amount, they're going to be like, oh, why? Just show me the bomb. And well, there's all this extra money going on. Do you find that hardware investors would be educated about the total cost of the thing?
It's their business to be educated.
Yeah. It depends on the investors. Some are, some aren't. Generally, I see when you have people coming from the software space and investing in hardware, they don't understand. People who are experienced in hardware will.
Which is not many investors.
Yes,
There's
that's right.
very
There's been a big trend where the software investors have been migrating to the
That's right.
hardware space.
Yeah.
The last couple of years.
Yeah.
We got shocked at the amount of money is being spent.
Can't we just do an agile development program? I've heard that a lot of times.
I mean, if you look at the history of hardware successes, right? There's not enough to go around to create enough good hardware investors that know what they're doing. So most investors that are even willing to invest in hardware, one, they almost never came from the factory, right? They came from finance. And coming from, if you haven't spent 15 years in hardware, you're not going to know hardware. So it definitely takes education, but it's not your job to educate them, right? It's your job to have the right plan and to know what you're talking about. And if you do that well, and you can back it up. What they want to see you hit milestones. They want to see what you're talking about. You've got the right team, technology, time. So you don't need to worry too much about what they don't know.
Yeah, I think if the product you try to do is not so far from things you did in the past, so it's not so new, the unknown is small, then it's okay if you have an investor that is not related with hardware. But if you want to do something very new, then you need a hardware investor. He understands that it's very risky and there are a lot of unknowns. But if it's small, if it's in the market already, the product or similar, then I think you are more safe. It's not so many things unknown. But if it's very new, the product.
And very often that's where we get involved, is we'll come in, we kind of be like, well, we've done a lot of hardware, this is the process, this is how you do it. And sometimes we just will put together a plan that you would then present to your investors and say, this is the plan we need to fulfill.
But if it's like new technology, it's not a standard consumer product, let's say, and you're using new technologies, and you mix in mechanics, electronics, and software, and maybe cloud or whatever. I think
It's very complicated, but that is how many products are now.
I mean, to do a business project plan.
That's right.
Because it's what we were talking about before, right? The
Yes.
timing and the money you want to spend, especially in electronics and software,
Yep.
is
But
very, very tricky.
I think investors will respect you if you actually have a reasonable plan.
Yes.
Things where you say that if this happens, the contingency is this.
Okay.
So that they
Yes.
will see that, oh, you're aware. It's complicated, but you're aware of all the pitfalls. And if you do hit a certain pitfall, you know what to do. Because they want you to be a safe steward for their money, right? They're afraid of you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, because otherwise they're taking chances based on market size and your ability to they know they're risking money.
Yeah, but I think it's difficult to find an investor that they know that the timeline and the money is elastic, especially if it's very new product in software and
So
hardware, electronics.
who you find in terms of investor, because I do find more sophisticated investors have all the models and all the mindset in place. But the more newer investor type, right, mostly angels, right? They don't have money, that's it, right? I want to invest something and I know about products. Those are where those questions will come up because they will ask a lot of questions or will drag you down a path that is totally not your permission. Right? So it's all about also looking for the right kind of investor.
Okay, so can we ask for some frontline stories? Greg had this one. That's a great one. That's a lucky one. Maybe it's some. The more approaches, the more actually.
Things that go wrong or things that what can go wrong.
Well, I mean, the one that we're working on right now, for example, at the prototype stage, they define everything based on availability on a distributor of components called DGK, right? So all components were all defined based on that. But then guess what? When you're trying to build 100,000 of that, you couldn't find enough, of that component. And that component we're talking about is capacitors. Right now in the whole market, basically, especially big shortage. So suddenly what happens is that now we can scramble, right? Because you have a product that works at prototype, EBT, DBT, everything's perfect, and then it's bought off, a DGQ and all that. And then suddenly when we transfer it to the big factories to manufacture, it's not manufacturable because the component is a shortage. Lead time. And then you have a product. And then now it's a scramble.
How do you assess that?
If I had jumped in earlier on,
Early, yeah.
correct, yeah. So
6 months early.
all of us from supply chain, who have this said that you never see this source a component as much as you can, and you create alternative parts and then line them up before you go to production, so that when you do go out this way, the supply chain will support you. But in this instance, we weren't aware of it until too late, and then now we're scrambling. Let's find alternatives, and sometimes you can't find the exact alternatives. You have to change your PCB to accommodate that. Boom, design change.
Yeah, and that's where I would say it goes from your bench prototype that you did in the lab. Sure, buy whatever part you can for your GP, make it work. But then your next step is to go to formal EVT, you're going to make your formal bill of materials, and then that's when you have to go to supply chain and say, here's my schematic, I did it this way, but now I need sourceable components. And you're going to just make design models to make it sourceable, right? And you might find out that, yeah, you have to change your design a little bit because sourceable isn't available.
So product development is not done once you have finally collide prototypes.
That's right.
That means that one more
For me, that's almost the beginning, right? It's out of the schedule, you've got at least 6 months ahead of you after you've got 6 to 9 months probably after your prototype before things are coming off production. Yeah, it depends on your product. Another big area where this also things that I've seen happen a lot with companies with good funding is that they're doing a lot of handcrafting and they start shipping samples out, and every one is a little bit different. That's been handmade, or we're going to develop it as we go. But then they have this backlog of dozens of product out there with customers they have to support. That every room's a different version, and you end up putting all your engineering resources on fixing your old product, and you have no time to design your new one. So having a good process to control your revisions. So unlike software, you don't revise every weekend, every week your hardware, you'll go nuts, you'll kill yourself. You freeze your design at a certain stage and then it's frozen until you do a next major revision 6 months or a year later. You've got to take that and lock it down and control it tightly because you cannot possibly handle all the revisions down once they're out in the field. It'll sinking.
isn't that the same philosophy as getting to an MVP? Right?
An MVP to me is that beginning stage. An MVP says, here it is on the bench, it works, I've proven it can work.
So
Now
MVP
you have
is
to go,
prototype. Yes.
now you have to go and say, now I have to make it manufacturable and consistent.
Consistent and then supportable in the field.
Yes, in the field.
There's something also in the field that, you for whatever reason you didn't do, OTA, over-the-air updates, then everything has to be shipped back and manually updated. That's going to kill you from a cost perspective. And of course, like, master reviews from people too, right? That function doesn't work. This doesn't work. So I have to think about that in a way ahead of time.
So what you're actually saying that you approach the manufacturing stage once you have lookalike prototype and actually the journey starts then. So before that, it's all just kind of preparation.
We get a question all the time, when should we engage with Berkeley Sourcing Group? And I'm just making my prototype. And my answer is always right now. Because just like Bob said, it's like, just give us what you have. We don't care if it's ugly or messy or whatever. We'll take a look and we can give you some good advice. Like, hey, that's component's not going to be available in a year, or this is never going to hit your price point, or what have you. But
Many products have sunk because some key feature turned out not to be manufacturable, where you have to make major design compromises, because you need to make something manufacturable.
How do startups need to approach MPI differently than enterprise?
For me, I think it's enterprise has a lot of money and a lot of resources available, so they can rely on that. Startup doesn't have that, so I think you go to places like Harvard Massive, you pull down documentation, you can talk to people like us, and you get just the right amount of expertise that you need, and just enough process that you need. Don't overdo it, don't underdo it. So.
you're going to have to cut corners.
Yeah.
And there's two things that are very true with startups. One is that you're never going to have the resources, right, to do everything the right way. So you have to cut corners. You have to. What will make you successful is cutting the right corners and not the wrong corners. The second thing, a little bit unrelated, but you have to compete on innovation, right? You can't compete on the scale of economy. You can't compete on price. You can't compete on partnerships for the most part. The only thing you're going to be really able to beat these big companies at is being more innovative. So whatever your value proposition is, that it has to be part of that.
And I wouldn't forget that makes me think of the marketing side of things, and that you're not going to have a massive marketing budget probably. So your product needs to in some way sell itself. That you're not going to have $1 billion like Apple does to go out and convince you that you should buy the next version. It has to kind of be obvious.
Yeah, that is just such a big one. I mean, it is so. We've had so many great products, and once you get to know it, wow, everybody would want it. But and then this is part of the problem with hardware innovation, especially, is because all the the stuff you really want to make is really cool, right? It has all of these great functionality, and it can integrate with this and that, and walk your dog and feed your kids, and the whole deal, right? And wow, doesn't everybody want one of those? But try to message that, right? And explain to someone why they need to spend $2,000, to do that when you have a $5,000 Google AdWords budget. It's really hard, and that's why that getting that
You can do some trial, right?
If you can't viral it, but again, it's art and science.
And there are ways to cut corners. I've seen all kinds of corners cut. And it's basically assessing your risks. Part of what I do is a lot of it's risk assessment. So, well, if we skip this test, or if we do this instead of that, what does that mean for us? Well, it might mean you're running this risk down the road. Well, you might decide from this perspective, I'll take that risk. I will say to you, yes, if you don't run that test, you're risking, you may have a 10% failure rate. But you might say, well, I can't afford to take it, and if I don't, I'll take that risk because I got to get to market. So at least you're taking it. But the important thing is that you're aware and that your business risks are chosen risks, not ones you're unaware you're taking.
And I work with Jay to make sure that whether that risk can be actually flushed out during the production process and limit the exposure to the market. By doing extra tests or whatever it is, so that during the production process, we can weed that out way ahead of time, so that we get what goes out is always good. So that's part of the whole communication.
So we're running out of time here. So we got to open it up to questions.
Okay, so as an industrial designer, I'm a little bit biased here, but
Yeah.
I find that, in my opinion, some of the hardware startups that I see, they focus a lot of their energy and effort on the tech.
Yep.
But if it's going to be a B2C product, they need to really think more about the
Yep.
user experience and how the product's going to look on the shelf and
Absolutely.
the appeal factor. And they don't spend enough time or invest enough money when they're doing really good
Yep.
design.
Yep. I think that's very often true. Engineers typically have been a lot involved, and it's a very difficult process to go from the creative industrial design to the hardware design process. There's a lot of trade-offs, often a lot of friction there. But it's, I think, critical to, especially consumer product, to have an appealing design.
Margin, I think, is the other one too, is that, it's very common to think that because Apple can make it for $2, I can
Yes.
make it for $2, right? But you're never going to get there. So you have to be able to sell it at a fair price.
And then if that goes to your distribution plan, are you going to follow the traditional retail channels where you have to, mark up 5 times before it gets to the consumer? Or if you go direct to consumer, you can offer a better product for a lower cost,
Sometimes.
plus you limit your reach.
Yeah.
Right? So-
But again, there are overheads involved though too, so it's not as much cheaper. It is cheaper, but not as much as you might think yourself. Right? But yes, I think the main battles come in. A lot of it comes in where the industrial design, I think, sometimes takes on almost a religious. I need this color and it cannot deviate. And you're spending a fortune to meet a color target that consumers may or may not notice. And this is where you get into the difficult areas.
But that's not even where the ID adds value. Really
Yeah.
good industrial design, if used strategically, is going to help drive some of the hardware.
Absolutely.
Right, because it's about user interface, it's about understanding the psychology and sociology of
Yep.
interaction.
The ideal industrial designer.
Yes.
That's correct. And I
Too
can
often
totally.
it's styling.
Correct. Or they are caught up in the whole, I want the next Jonathan Ives, so I have to be
Yeah.
2 millimeters shorter or thinner than the next person, and so that my name is associated with the most beautiful thing. And then from my side, I just awesome.
I've had that battle, but conversely, I would say what quite frankly distinguishes, say a European or U.S.-based design versus, stuff that comes straight out of China is the industrial design. That's what, and it could be the same electronics on the inside. It could be the same cost, but having an appeal to its market is incredibly important.
And that can be protected.
Well, design patents
Wow.
can be circumvented very quickly.
Yeah.
So,
There's
your
no
real
design patent.
Yeah.
There's no design patent.
Well, there are design patents.
Yeah.
You can get design patents, but design patents
Design
can be easily
registration.
they can be easily circumvented. No, in the U.S.,
Yeah.
it's a category
It is.
of IP protection. You have a design patent, you have a utility patent, you have a plant organism patent or a chemical patent. Those are the different ones. The greatest amount of protection is around the utility patent because that protects the functionality. In the U.S. at least, I'm not sure about other markets, but there is a design patent. But design patents are basically useless because they only cover the visual ornamentation aspects.
So it's
That's
static.
easily
It's static.
circumvented.
It's not. Yeah.
What did you say?
Well, in Europe, you don't have it.
You don't have it.
But we
You have
consider
design registration.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's
the
fairly
patent.
loose. It's fairly loose.
Because
You
the
can't
patent
count on
is
that.
Yeah.
mechanism.
It's basically the same.
Yeah.
It's just like change any little thing.
It's just like, okay, that radius is 25, we change it to 24. It's not the same,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So it's very static. It's exactly according to your CAD that is in violation.
Yeah.
So it's easy to circumvent.
Yeah, but strategic industrial design actually ends up affecting the decisions about hardware functionality and engineering which then creates a much more protective thing because the way it looks and how it functions are kind of integral, you know, and that makes it harder to rip that apart because they can't really do the function without having it look that way.
Impacts are
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I agree, it's extremely important to make your product appealing to its market. But yes, I don't know that you can rely on industrial design alone to maintain your market edge. It gets you there, but I don't know that it holds it. You have to have a good functional product.
Yeah, it's just sometimes when you've got brilliant tech, but the thing doesn't either latch appeal or the user interface is
Yep.
frustrating.
Yep.
That creates the block between, creates a good user experience, even though the problem that it solves can be great.
So that reminds me of the famous Sony remote control.
Yeah.
Like 50 buttons. Everything under the sun.
Remote control
Sucks so bad, but I mean, but it's Sony, right?
But Sony's not a master of design. They're really not.
But when we're kids, the Walkman, the disc,
Yeah.
right? So, but then Apple came up with the single button feature.
But this is often where you get into, when I talk about feature creep, if those things if the usability, the UI, UX, isn't thought about early, what happens is now you're building your first prototypes and somebody starts to use it, oh, this thing's really difficult, I didn't know which button to push. That's when you have to go back and you're adding buttons or subtracting buttons or changing things. So it's hard work to visualize that, but you almost need to sit down and have a session at some point before you commit to tools, before you finalize your design, to say, step me through the user experience. And I've seen user experience documents or user journey, or how do I go from setup to how do I go about doing each major operation, what are the button pushes or whatever it is, to make sure everybody understands what they are and you haven't forgotten something or realized that, well, here's some cases where that doesn't work. Very, very important to do in your design phase. You have a design reviews, you have usability reviews.
Yeah, especially because if you are involved in design, I think you get blind
Yeah.
what the customer really is going to feel because you are so used to your product.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then nobody else understands your product.
Exactly. And at least alpha testing, beta testing, eating your own dog food, right? The first time you have a user unit, give it to people on your team, give it to somebody's mom, what's the product, but get it to at least someone who can give you an independent evaluation of how well it works.
But again,
Outside of your...
If you can, outside.
You're biased. So.
but again, then you have to define very well your niche, right?
Yes.
And to know your niche, you have to test also if they're willing to pay money or...
And what's very hard, especially with a new product, it's very hard to ask consumers in advance what they want. You kind of have to create it and show it to them and say, can you use this? Do you like it? And it's hard because, you have to actually invest first before you have anything to ask them. Huh?
They don't have a reference point.
No, they don't. I mean, I can remember when we did webcams before there was webcams, and we mocked it up and we explained to people, we did focus groups, and people looked at it and they kept wanting to turn it into either a still camera or a camcorder, because those were the only reference points they had. They had no concept of how you might use, a live video camera. So we ended up having to basically, that was kind of a waste to do this focus groups. We had to visualize it ourselves.
But there are some tools that you can use from a design standpoint that can do that for you. So even if you have a full mock-up in your hand of a controller, right?
Yeah.
It may not actually have any electronic guts in it.
Correct.
But you ask somebody to go through, you explain to them what the buttons do, and then you ask them to actually, let's engage a certain function, and they press a sequence, and you know which thing. So you basically, even if it's just a piece of paper or cardboard, you go, okay, press that. Oh, this did that.
Yep.
Then you press this. Wait, I pressed that. No, that did
Yep.
this instead.
Yep.
That's how you physically
Read.
do the experience.
Yeah.
Headphones are really interesting. So as we were talking about, so I told you I made like 200. I gave them out to 200 people. Got like 130 responses. I literally got 130 unique things that they wanted to change. Literally every single person.
Wow.
In the this is like, it's just a headphone. You put it in
Yeah.
your ear and you listen to music, right? But, you know, it was the ear cavity set, all this, it was really, it's a unique market. It takes a lot of research.
Yeah.
Well, that's why good ones ship with like, a whole box or an envelope of different ear tips, different sizes and different materials.
Yeah.
But that's a relatively minor investment, knowing that your consumer is going to throw away 90% of those accessories. But if they manage to get one that they like, that's what gives them the positive user experience. So it's worth the investment.
Yeah. Great. I think we're just about out of time.